Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans, college sports fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show. I'm going to make this intro short and sweet. By the way, breaking news earlier this week, Ohio State, Michigan, 2024 in Ohio Stadium. Breaking news is going to start at 12 noon on, I guess, on Fox. Big Fox, big noon Saturday on Fox. There's breaking news for you. Tradition lives, ladies and gentlemen, in an era when tradition is going to the wayside. Ohio State, Michigan at noon, it lives. So set your clocks, paint your calendars, do whatever you do to get ready for the Ohio State Michigan game, the greatest rivalry in sport at noon this year. Going to be a lot on the line probably for the Ohio State football team. It's favored to possibly run the table. Heck, my quote, friend, end quote, Paul Feinbaum has even picked Ohio State as the number one team in the country, at least going into the summer. We'll see how he goes from that. As you know, I was on his show last week. It was a little bit controversial one way or the other, but personally, I like Paul Feinbaum because he's made a living out of doing what he does. You got to give it up to him on that. And I'll get the mouth of the South on the Tim May Show again. We'll see how that goes down. But bottom line is, this is sort of like in that lull period. Yeah, Ohio State picked up a couple of basically preferred walk-on transfers, including a punter over the past week. They need that at least for that room. It's going to be interesting to see if the McLarty kid from Australia ends up being the punter. The guy's about 6 foot and 100, and just can boom the ball. But we'll see if the kid from Buffalo can step in and give him a challenge along with everyone else who's on campus. But that's about as big a news as there was this week in Ohio State football, at least as I record this. You never know about Ohio State football from 1 minute to the next, much less 1 hour to the next. But I want to hurry up and get into this because my conversation this week is with LeCharles Bentley, former All-American center for Ohio State, who went into the NFL, had to leave the NFL after developing a staph infection that really put his life in jeopardy for a while. But man, did he rebound big time. And LeCharles is one of my favorite players of all time. I say that about almost everybody I ever have on this show, but he definitely was. And you'll see why as we have our conversation, an extended conversation with LeCharles Bentley, who's got a lot of irons in the fire, from getting people ready for the draft, from honing skills of NFL players who are still in the NFL 7, 8, and 9 years. They come to him for tips, advice, exercises, all kinds of skill set things he can help them with. And he also works a little bit for the National Football League. He's got a lot going on with headquarters in both the Cleveland area and in Chandler, Arizona. He is a walking, talking success story. And the reason is because when he got done playing football, he figured out pretty quickly that there's a big thing between playing football and teaching life lessons. And he set about teaching himself how to do that, and then came back strong. And he's like I said, he's quite the success story. And by the way, speaking of success stories, my guest last week was Ty Tucker, a longtime tennis coach at Ohio State, the 17-time Big Ten Coach of the Year, the 18 straight Big Ten championships, including this year. Well, you saw over the weekend, his team won again in the Super Regionals over Mississippi State, and has advanced now to the national quarterfinals in Stillwater, Oklahoma. You ought to go back and review that. It was a great conversation with Ty Tucker, who, by the way, plays tennis almost every morning with Ryan Day, the head football coach at Ohio State. So if you want to, I think that was an enjoyable conversation. We were sitting in the Ty Tucker Tennis Center. Say that 3 times. The Ty Tucker Tennis Center, when we recorded, sitting on the very court where he and Ryan Day wage battle on almost every morning. I think it's probably a thing where Ty Tucker keeps balls in the air where they can be returned by Ryan Day, because Ty Tucker at one point was a rising star in the sport of tennis. Finally figured out he probably wasn't going to get all the way to the top of that, and became one of the great coaches of all time in college tennis. But good luck to him and his group as they go after a national championship. They've never won under Ty Tucker, they've never won a national outdoor championship. They've won what I think 2 indoor championships, but that doesn't seem to count in some people's tally books. So we'll see where they end up this coming weekend. But good luck to those guys. But without further ado, let's get to my conversation with LeCharles Bentley. You know, I say it all the time, but man, have I been wanting to catch up with this young man? Yeah, he's still a very young man. LeCharles Bentley, finally, welcome to the Tim May Show.
I appreciate you so much, Tim, for having me.
Yeah, I tell you, man, you said I was telling you before we started, I wish I'd worn my muscle shirt so I could look, big and
Hey,
stout. It would be
you
more like a
missed
before and after picture, huh?
you missed an opportunity, Tim.
There you go. Anytime you can get your guns out, right?
Right, it's
Um,
springtime. It's springtime now.
that's true. That I have to take my allergy medicine. That's what I do. Hey, so I took my allergy medicine. We're good on that. But Charles, man, let's catch people up, man. You know, I know you remember this, but we didn't get to interact all the time. But you were one of my favorite guys when you were at Ohio State, and for a lot of reasons. Number one of which is you spoke your mind. Number two, you were a hell of a player. Number three, you stood your ground one time, which we won't get into, but what was a major moment in Ohio State football history. You know what I'm talking about. Um, but the bottom line is you went in, you played football at the highest level. You end up in the NFL, you played at the highest level. Injury or illness, it was kind of a combo, right? I mean, you got kind
Yeah,
of a staph infection thing, I think that led to some tough times, but
right.
finally had to step away from the game. And now what do I do? So explain to people, what are you doing?
You have to reinvent yourself. And for me, I do a lot of things. And I don't know exactly where I would lay my hat, so to speak, but if I had to do it somewhere or place it somewhere, it would certainly be I live in the business of football. That's what I do. And I felt that when I left the game or transitioned out of the game, there was so much football left in me that I wasn't quite ready to put the game down.
Yeah.
So you have to find ways where, as a player, it's impossible to play this game your entire life. However, there are opportunities inside of the game, inside of the business of the game, that if you truly love this game, I feel that players should never leave it. There are areas inside of the game on the coaching side, be it media, operational. There's just so many facets of football that even while playing it, I was totally unaware of. This wasn't by design; it was just how I'm wired.
Yeah.
I'm focused on one thing, and that's the one thing that I lived in. But as I began to transition out, you look for ways and explore ways to stay in the game. And that's what I've been able to do is carve out a niche for myself where I still live in the game. I love the game and the business of football. It's what I wake up each and every day and I do.
Yeah. And the thing about it is, you spent how many years of your life learning to play the game at the highest level from Pee Wee on, I'm sure. And you got so much knowledge, not just that you've gleaned from coaches who brought you along, but you gleaned just from observation. You were a great observational guy. You basically hinged on detail. And you've taken that into this realm. I mean, is that what you felt like you kind of studied for a doctorate, but now where do I practice it?
That's a great way to look at it. I had a PhD in football.
Yeah.
However, that is a skill set that is totally irrelevant relative to the rest of your life. No one cared how much you might have bench pressed when you played. No one cares how many tackles you made or how fast you were. All of the skills that you acquire in your football journey, by the time you're about 25, and most certainly by the time you're 30 years old, you have zero use for them. So that for many young athletes is a really daunting reality. And in that process, oftentimes you're encouraged to focus on football, focus on football, focus on football. And once that skill set and that lifestyle is exhausted, it's now how do you transition for myself? And this is something I preach to players that I engage with is the fact that yes, you have a PhD in football, but you also have a significant amount of undergrad knowledge and all of the transferable skills that you can now apply to life that will begin to allow you to acquire another PhD in other facets of life. So you think about the idea that for myself, not many 18, 19, 20-year-olds are able to sit in what I would identify as a Fortune 500 meeting with a Fortune 500 CEO every single day, and that was John Cooper. And then it was Jim Tressel. Those meeting times for me, those were not just meetings per se, football meetings. If you just reverse engineer the reality of what players are experiencing, you are in a high stress, high level profession every single day. And if you could just simply extrapolate from those experiences, the nuance and the details and the skills that are shown to you on a day-to-day basis, that you even acquire throughout your journey, you're able to then transition into the next phase of your life more efficiently. Will there still be bumps in the road? No doubt. There's that emotional disconnect. It's almost like going through a divorce. You're leaving something you've cleaved yourself to, and now you have to now transition into something else. And there is that emotional hurdle that you have to get over. But the ability to do so, if you've played this game at a high level, when I say a high level, I'm just really referring to the kids at Ohio State and college football players, where 90+% of them will never play a snap in the National Football League. Yeah. It doesn't mean that you don't have an opportunity to carve out an extremely successful life for yourself if you just lean into the gifts and the talents that you've acquired that you may not value right now, but those seeds are truly there.
What's the name of your company?
Which one?
What? Well, yeah, I was going to say, I know the LB, the other one, what's the other one?
You got AMDG Sports, I got OLP Media, I have LB Design. My media company, we create content for coaches to educate coaches and athletes on how to better prepare athletes. And then you have my agency. We represent about 30 players in the National Football League, and it's just what it is. It's a sports agency, but I believe it's a different model because it's a developmental sports agency, as I call it, where I believe we have a unique skill set and value proposition because we can actually make a player better, whereas typically in the industry, that's not the model. Yeah. Then I have a performance company as well, and that's where we kind of lean into developing athletes. So I do a myriad of things, again, all within the business of football. I have a unique opportunity to enroll with the National Football League as a special advisor or senior advisor. It's one of them fancy titles that they've given me. It's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah.
I wasn't on a fancy title. I got a fancy title that I didn't give myself. So being on that side of the fence as well, it has really opened my eyes to the possibilities inside of the game for athletes, and not just athletes, but people that love football. You may not be able to play the game per se, but if you love it, there's something for you to do inside of the game that you can serve the game, you can serve athletes, really carve out a unique lifestyle for yourself. But that role with the league, I truly, truly love that experience because it's so it's so contradictory to I guess you can say the mindset that I developed as a player. When I was a player, I was an NFLPA rep. So I worked on the behalf of players. Yeah. Now being on this side of the fence with the NFL, you've had to you've had to flip a lot of your thinking, but at the same time, understanding that there's a business side of football and then you have what's happening on the field. And when you're a player, you don't understand that stuff. And nor should you really invest too much energy in trying to fully understand it because you got a job to do at the end of the day. But the business side of football, what really has been eye-opening for me is how much is truly invested in protecting and serving players. Wow. Yeah. How much is truly invested in reducing as much unnecessary risk inside of the game. Like that's something that has been mind-blowing for me because as a player, it's always been, they don't care about us. The league, it's all about money. Yeah, it's about money. But at the same time, it is also about serving the game and serving players, because that's one thing about business folk is they understand very well that the product is the product, and a key instrument to that product that makes it go are the players.
Yeah, and be more specific for the NFL. What do you do on a weekly basis or a daily basis or a monthly basis? What service do you provide them?
There are several areas that I serve in, and one of them is players' health and safety. And the overall arching element of that is called the NFL way to play. So with the way to play, it's the league's mission to reduce as much unnecessary risk inside of the game at all levels of football. There's a trickle-down component to it where the implementation of rules and regulations and strategies to reduce that unnecessary risk, the thought process is it begins to trickle down to the lower levels of football. An example would be, at the league level, we've banned Oklahoma drill, which is an inline blocking drill. You've seen. I don't have to you, but the people that may or may not know, it's an inline drill where you got O-line, D-line, we're banging heads against one another. You got the running back, and we're trying to. In the football world, it's a toughness drill. You're trying to create toughness, but in actuality, it's not something that really develops the skills that you're looking for inside of the game. So what the league has done is realized through a lot of testing and the data acquisition component of it, you begin to realize that this particular drill may expose players to more risk than it's actually worth. So the drill has been banned at the league level. However, what you would assume is that at the lower levels of football, that high school and obviously college as well, that those drills were kind of matriculated away. Well, I was just on Instagram a few minutes ago before I started chatting with you, and I was watching a high school in Texas, and of course they're doing the drill. And but it's a working process. It's something that anything that a ship as big as football, that's been so ingrained in the antiquated mindset of what it takes to develop players. It's a ship that takes a long time to turn. And to get people's minds and coaches and players' mind to shift in a different direction, it is certainly not going to be overnight. But each and every day, I have an opportunity to chip away in that regard. The other aspects of it are international business growth and development, seeing the game continue to expand around the globe. Flag football, that's a significant underpinning to what the league's initiatives are in terms of the game of tomorrow. And I'm a big believer in what flag football is able to do in relation to developing players for tackle football. It's a key tool in developing better players in the tackle game. And I can get into that if you want to, but the other aspect of it is I'm what you call a girl dad. I have a daughter, and so with that being said, I have an opportunity now. If she more so has an opportunity that if she wants to play football, there's an avenue for her to explore the game as well. So that inclusion is a big aspect of where the league is trying to go to continue to make sure that everyone has a unique opportunity and more so a special experience is out of football.
Yeah, I was going to say, with the proliferation really of flag football for females, I mean, it's interesting, right? How it is really caught fire. I mean, and it really has. I mean, and you guys are a lot behind that, right?
Absolutely. It's a significant pillar in the business of football. It's a significant driver, as I've mentioned, in terms of building out the game of tomorrow. Having the Olympics, achieving that goal was a significant milestone in this process. But I believe that the biggest driver of flag football to me is in two areas. Number one, the inclusion of it, having young girls have an opportunity to have the same experiences as young boys. You have young girls now that they can play. It's just not a soft sport. They can really go out here and play and also be able to capitalize on their skill sets. So to have a young girl have an opportunity to play high school, a high school varsity sport, and then be recruited and then have an opportunity to have college paid for, or at least a reduction in your tuition, that's big. That's a big big step in the game. That's a big step for equality within the respective sport. So you love to see that happening, and you want to continue to see flag football expand. Now there are those naysayers in the tackle realm that are the purists, and it's,
Yeah.
tackle football makes flag football makes tackle soft, and you're cannibalizing the game. And that's not true. And I was going to say that's not wholly true. It's not true at all. It's not true at all. There are so many components of tackle football that are actually on display in flag football. And if we think about where tackle football is currently at, it's become a game of space and speed. As you know, you've lived this game, and you've seen how when I played it, it was the old Woody Hayes model. We're going to ground and pound, and we're going to run the ball, and we're going to be physical. And Coach Tressel, punt is the most important facet of football. Like these ideas that still hold true to a degree. However, you see multiple wide receiver sets. We're seeing much more spread out game. We're seeing defensive linemen that now are on a defensive line that probably when I played would have been either safeties or certainly outside linebackers.
Yeah.
So the game and the speed of the game has significantly increased because you're trying to cover much more ground. With that said, flag football, by its just the nature of it, it's a space and speed game. So a young athlete like my son who's playing it right now, he's understanding and learning angles of pursuit. He's understanding proper posture. He's understanding how to play the game without physical contact. He's playing in space. He's experiencing how to get in an open field position and break himself down. Whenever if he decides to play tackle football, those skills are going to carry over to tackle football. And for me as a father, that certainly excites me because I'm a big believer that you can take football out of a young athlete faster than you can put it into them. And what I would never want to have happen to my son is his experience with football, because his first experience is a collision, that's a tackle, that's something that he physically or more so emotionally may not be ready for, and he shies away from it. So he's able to grow into the game, and that's exciting.
Yeah, that's real. Well, we went down a path there. I wasn't even
I
expecting
apologize.
to. No. I totally appreciate it. By the way, I'm trying to remember. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was you. Maybe it wasn't you. Didn't you get hurt in the Oklahoma drill at Ohio State?
I did. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
I remember that. It was my last year. Yes, sprained my knee against Kenny Peterson.
Yeah, exactly. Who was the running back in that one? I don't even remember.
Jonathan Wells. Yeah, I remember that. Wow, man, you got a great memory.
Oh, I know, but I'm just going. There are when you really look back at people's backgrounds, and I'm sure you're sitting there in the hospital, or when you're on the way to getting diagnosed, you're going, why in the hell were you even doing this? You know what I mean? It's like to get everybody. It's almost like to get everybody else fired up. I mean, you wouldn't have been there if you couldn't play football. So
exactly,
kind of left me, wondering. It reminded me of a game that I'm not going to say the name of. We used to play in the side yard at our house. Whoever had the football, and then everybody else.
Yep, I know what you're talking about.
Let me put it this way: we won't say the name. Archie Griffin actually said the name of it once on my show, but I will just say the word smear was in there.
yes.
But anyway, well, Charles, that's interesting, man. Any way to evolve the game and grow the game, I think is cool. I mean, 7-on-7 tournaments are all over the place, in teams and stuff. And flag football is kind of a mix, of 7-on-7 and real football, except you don't hit people and take them to the ground, et cetera. And I just saw a video yesterday of some girls playing flag football, and they threw it out and then they slowed it down. And this girl had these hip moves and invasive actions. And I'm going, Barry Sanders would have been great in flag football.
Yes.
You still may not have been able to get him down.
Right.
Anyway, but hey, but real quickly, you guys, I mean, obviously some former Buckeye offensive linemen, starting, I think, with Taylor Decker. He might have been one of your first customers. I don't know, or first guy you worked with, but you have part of your business is, in essence, getting offensive linemen ready for the draft and then enhancing their skills as they play the game in the NFL and stuff. And I was watching a video of you a couple of weeks ago, and just the little nuance things that you throw in there that are, not just stand up, get the right stand. It used to be when I was coming up, you had to block like this. Now you can use your hands and stuff. Hands have changed everything for offensive linemen and defensive linemen for that matter. But I would think, just number one, why did you decide to get into that aspect of it? It's pretty obvious why, but then number two, does almost every day, do you learn a kind of a new way to teach something or to, add nuance to the game?
That's a great question. I'm going to start with the second part of that question. I'm a student of football. I'm a student, and I am very fortunate to live in a classroom. I literally live in the classroom every single day. So I'm fortunate to be able to work with and be engaged with athletes at every single level of the game. So you have the highest of the high in the National Football League, all the way down to, a freshman in high school. So I'm able to study. I study and I live in this laboratory where you get to experience all of the nuance, and you understand the growth challenges inside of the game at every level. There's some universal underpinnings that regardless of where you are in your football path, that you have to continually address. But at the same time, it's how you deliver the message. It's how you deliver the message. It's how you expose the athlete to the methodology. So with a young athlete, there are some things that you have to do that are foundationally rooted, but it may have to be a bit more fun. It may have to be a bit more creative, where you're not getting to this level where it's clownish and it's foolish. Everything has a rhyme and a reason. And when you get to the higher level of football, I believe the athletes have become more masters of the mundane. They are more equipped emotionally and mentally to be in a very rudimentary state for an extended period of time. So you can take an athlete like Taylor Decker, and you can spend an hour just focusing on the same thing, and his attention span won't break. But if I take a 14-year-old and you spend an hour focusing on the same thing, you've lost them 55 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, I'm in a position where my mind is constantly churning on how to evolve methods, to challenge athletes, to challenge coaches, to rethink what's possible and how we develop athletes. Partly because, again, with this respective generation, many people may hold their opinions on them, and I hold my own. However, the one thing this generation of athlete is uninformed. And so you as a coach, if a teacher or someone involved with developing young athletes, if you aren't on top of your game, you're done for, because they can go to YouTube, they can go to Instagram, they can go find anything they want. And as you know very well, oftentimes what they're going to seek out is not going to be the things that they need to really take themselves to where they want to ultimately go. Yeah. So all in all, Tim, I get to live in a laboratory, and I love that aspect of my life. Yesterday, for example, I was working and spent some time with a 8th grade player that's getting ready to go into high school. And then that afternoon, one of the guys that played for the Browns that has really no football background. He's a part of the international pathway program. He's from Nigeria. He came over and spent some time with me as well. And then there's another player that plays here in Cleveland that came over, and he's in his 8th year in the season, 8th year in the league, and I spent some time with him. And so that's a very vast group of athletes that you're touching. And then there's another, this past Sunday, I spent some time with some of the kids from Ignatius. Some of them are 4- and 5-star level type recruits, and some kids are just backups that are working to be really good backups. So each and every group that you have an opportunity to spend some time around, I personally have to be a bit of a chameleon and meet them where they are. The biggest struggle I've had early in my, I guess you could say, my growth into where I am is I would impose my own will and dreams and goals onto the athletes, and it was toxic. It was bad.
Yeah.
If a guy didn't want to make it to the Hall of Fame, I don't want you in the building. It was like, because I was still dealing with my own traumas and hadn't quite recovered and healed and really fully leaned into where I was at in my football and just my life in general. But that phase of myself, I'm able to now take where I am and really allow God to use me for that moment and for that person.
Yeah.
If you just want to be the best backup, you know what? Damn it, let's go be the best backup that you can be. If you want to just go make money, hey, let's go and make as much money as you can. I always tell players, I'll help you rob the league, but I'm not going to help you steal from the game.
Yeah. Ooh.
Two different things.
Yeah.
You will not steal from the game on my watch, but if you want to go rob the league, that's your business. But you're not going to steal from the game.
So you're laying in bed and you think of that little slogan right there, and do you have a pad where you wake up and write it down like a comedian writes down a joke? That's a hell of a line. That's a hell of a line.
It's funny you say that. I always tell kids when I'm talking to them, something comes to my mind. And I'm like, oh, that's a good tweet. I'm going to tweet that later. And I'm always kind of joking about it. But sometimes I'm not. But I do have a notepad where certain things I write down. And, and also, Tim, I guess I don't want to go too far right. I'm a big, no, I don't like to say it that way. Let me rephrase what I'm going to say. I'm at a stage in my life where I allow God to use me for whatever it is. There may have been a time when, a high school kid, me spending time with that kid, it was like, it felt like, no, this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing now. It's like, no, I need to, like if I'm in a different profession, if I'm a journalist, I need to be writing for the biggest, outlet there is. I don't need to be writing blogs. Like, no, you have to allow God to use you where you are. And that's something I've truly began to embrace is the fact that whatever I'm called to do, just serve in that area. If that means that a Sunday morning I have to get up and spend some time with, some 13-year-old kid that's aspiring to be what he wants to be. But then maybe that following week I have to go sit in meetings with NFL ownership. I have to be able to serve in all capacities.
Yeah.
And that for me personally is very fulfilling to know that I can be wherever I need to be and be whatever I am called to be when I'm called to do so.
Yeah.
And that's something I've settled into. But again, I've had to mature to this stage in my life because, there was a time when, as I said, I wasn't ready for a lot of things that, I wanted. And I realized that some of the things that I wanted, it's probably been a blessing I did not get them because it wouldn't have been healthy for me or anyone else more so for that fact.
Yeah. Yeah. In other words, everything you do, you want to be there mentally as well as physically is what you're saying. I mean, and giving it your 100% for what it's worth there. It's that's interesting, well, Charles, because I would think, see, that's what I've always said, the greatest players sometimes haven't been the best coaches because they, like Wayne Gretzky, oh my goodness, is there a better hockey player ever? But, we understand he wasn't a great coach, but the point is, it's like, you can't understand why somebody else can't see the game the way you see it.
Yes.
And, immediately grasp any kind of idea you throw out there. Whereas, you look at some of the great college football coaches or NFL coaches, some are little bitty guys, you know what I mean? But they've got 6'8", 6'6" guys listening to their every word, because those guys know they've invested the time, effort, and skill into understanding the game and then teaching it. The teaching part is the part I would think you had to refine more than anything else, right? Because like you just pointed out, from an 8th grader in the morning to a 6 or 8 year pro in the afternoon, you run the gamut because here you're teaching fundamentals. Here you're honing. You're making this guy You're helping this guy get from A to B, as Urban Meyer like say 4 to 6 A to B, but you're helping him get to A to B even quicker with maybe a little bit of a nuance change.
Yes,
Like I keep using the word nuance, but there are
that's
ways.
what it is. Yeah.
The point is to get from here to there
Mhm.
as quick as you did 5 years ago, and and there are tricks of doing it, right? I mean, it's to me that's interesting.
You're spot on. I've always believed that the biggest mistake players make, you know, when they leave the game, you assume you can teach.
Yeah,
You assume you can teach. And I totally agree with you. Some of the worst coaches were the best players.
yeah,
What I believe that every player, if you're choosing to get into coaching post career, take the football mask off. Take the mask off. Let go of your experience. Let go of what you were able to do, and inversely, what you were not able to do
yeah,
as well, because it goes both ways. There are some guys that get into this game that didn't quite achieve what they wanted to achieve, and they get into the game and they aren't truly emotionally ready to serve players, and they become some of the most toxic coaches.
yeah,
Whereas on the other hand, some of the best players that were significant achievers, they're great to be around, but they can't give you anything.
yeah,
But for both sides of the fence, I believe that you have to spend some time alone, some time quiet, some time in reflection and asking God, how can I be of service? How can I be used to become the best version of myself or someone else to meet them where they are? I had to spend an extensive amount of time away from football. Some of that was forced due to some of the things I was dealing with my injury and then the subsequent infections and whatnot. I spent a significant amount of time with track coaches, high level Olympic track coaches, where the emphasis on a tenth of a second. So the nuance you refer to, understanding how the body works through the science of mechanics and sleep and diet, and how everything has a cohesive aspect to it in order to give the athlete the best chance to be successful. That for me was my moment where, having turned football off, you get caught up in the rigmarole of the football, you know, typical uh, football talk, or
yeah,
footballese, as you call it,
yeah,
and you don't know anything else. But for me, I was able to have some construct where, having what I had known about football, and now they can be able to cross-reference that with a shot put or a hammer throw or the 100-meter, and understanding driving versus stepping or kicking, and understanding how the body's supposed to move. Now I got it. And
yeah,
so that stage is, I don't have to come back to football and be a football guy. I'm going to have to come back to football and prove to you that I was a good football player. You can Google that. But now I can come back to football and give something of meaningful substance from the teaching and the tactical aspect of it, and make connections in the player's mind that in the world of football, it may not be able to come fully to fruition. But more importantly, that time away allowed me to heal. It allowed me to truly reconcile with where I was at. And this is something that I believe every single player has to go through. I don't care who you are. You have to humble yourself to go through that process, to acknowledge you don't know a damn thing about service. You don't know a damn thing about taking what you know and providing it to a person and to a player in a way that they can appropriately receive it.
yeah,
Orlando Pace is the greatest Ohio State offensive lineman ever to play. There's zero doubt in my mind that he knows how to take a pass set. But
yeah,
there's a process that we all have to go through in order to take that institutional knowledge that we have, that tactical knowledge, to reframe it from how we understand it, and even to get away from what we're physically capable of. There's some things that I realized that I did as a player, other players cannot do.
yeah,
I can't expect that from them. I can't ask my 8-year-old son to deadlift 500 pounds. Maybe at some point he can, but as of right now, I have to meet him where he's at, and I think that that's something that all great teachers are able to do. And this is something, strangely, I look back on it, the biggest influence on the words that I'm speaking to you now that were represented from just a tangible standpoint was Jim Tressel. Jim Tressel. That man embodied exactly what I'm referring to. His ability to meet you where you are, his ability to serve into your needs while also serving into the greater good. That's a level of mastery that I feel that every coach, every teacher, everyone that's involved with athletes should be trying to attain. And unfortunately, that's not necessarily the case, because you got good journalists, you got bad ones. You got good coaches, you got bad ones. And you always have that. But I think that the good ones, we have to become more vocal in how to effectively develop athletes.
Yeah, I think we're all subject to luck of the draw, meaning, boy, if you grew up and you were a great passer in East Texas, where I grew up, and the wishbone came along, and your little town, the high school played, they went to the wishbone, and you were a great passer, where you were kind of screwed. I mean, you weren't going to get that shot, to be the quarterback. And you're right. I mean, I that's what I like to. I mean, I like about every coach I've covered at Ohio State has had, just great skill, and I'm talking about head coaches in one form or another. But Jim Tressel just seemed to ponder the game, and how you, meaning LeCharles Bentley or whomever, Jonathan Wells, how you fit into that game, right? And how you could best serve the team. And I would think the other thing that you run into is you've learned how to judge, or enhance or stress economy of motion and efficiency of motion, which is what you were talking about a while ago, about dealing with track and field athletes and stuff, and just watching how they use their body to get that boom, that one powerful moment that makes or breaks you, right? And every sport's the same in that regard, right?
No doubt. Movement is movement. The way that athletes move, the way that athletes perform, there are universal laws. And your coaching philosophy, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It either fits into these principles or they don't. However you want to label them, the verbiage you want to use to express that to your players, it's your choice. It's chocolate ice cream versus vanilla ice cream. Whatever you like, you like. However, if it's real ice cream, the foundation of it's going to be milk. You have to have milk. And that's the same thing with human performance. There are some foundational rules that you have to abide by, and whatever sprinkles you want to put on top, that's your choice.
Yeah. And sometimes you come with sprinkles, but you got to find the foundation, right? I mean,
bingo. Yeah. Sometimes you got too many sprinkles.
Yeah. Orlando Pace came with a lot of sprinkles. I'll never forget him. Hey, last couple things I want to keep you, because I know you're busy. You're a busy guy. I want to jump to this. I remember distinctly, I'm driving to Cleveland one day, and this was in December, and y'all evidently had a couple of days off before you went to a bowl game, and this guy goes by me, not blast by me, but this guy goes by me, and on the left-hand side, this is when I-71 was 2 lanes. I look, and it's LeCharles Bentley, and you're driving. I wouldn't say you were driving a sports car. You were driving a beat up old car, and you had a little stack of Christmas gifts about this high sitting next to you in the front seat. It was like you're going home to mom or whatever. You had your arm around them so they wouldn't spill. You don't remember this because you didn't see me, but I remember you going by me. You might have seen me, but my point was, these days, LeCharles, you would have a car deal with somebody. You'd probably be driving the biggest, baddest truck, or whatever it is you want to do. You know what I'm talking about, with name, image, and likeness and stuff. And just, I always want to get your take on, not a dissertation, but your take on where the college football, everything other than football, has gone with name, image, and likeness, the transfer portal, et cetera. You as a former player, do you like what you're seeing, but does it need to be corralled in some form or fashion? Because it is, pardon the expression, the wild, wild west out there right now in terms of the money that's out there for players, the ability to change venues almost on a whim, et cetera. Just give me your, when your buddies, that didn't play football ask you about this, how do you explain it to them about what's going on and what side of the fence are you on?
I love it. I love it. I love the freedom and opportunities players are afforded. Uh, however, there should be some guardrails put in place to make sure that the mind of a 17-year-old,
Yeah.
the mind of an 18-year-old, doesn't potentially cause more damage to their future than good. Now, I'll also like to add that what we're seeing is the direct impact of years and years of, for lack of a better term, but also an appropriate term, abuse of power by coaches, abuse of power by the NCAA. And now all of a sudden, that pendulum has swung dramatically back the other way. Okay, it's fair. The rabbit has the gun now. All right,
Yeah.
it is what it is. Okay, but at some point, we do have to get it back to a midline where it's, I wouldn't call it necessarily fair for either party, but more so in alignment with what the ultimate goals for some of these kids should be, which is you got to get an education.
Yeah.
You have to get a degree. Whether or not you're NFL or not, but you got to get that degree. And right now, kids are taking visits to schools, not to have conversations about, if you have the major that I want to enroll in, but more so how much money you're going to pay me. And I think that that's where, we're too far. And as you mentioned, the wild, it's too wild right now. We got to get it back to keeping the main thing, which is these are institutions of higher education. It's Ohio State University, not Ohio State football. You go there to be a student athlete, and maybe I'm just being a bit naive, but I also understand that, excuse me, majority, nearly all of these young athletes are not going on to the next level. You're just not. And even if you do have an opportunity, to get into a rookie minicamp, undrafted, you will never you will never start a game in this league. You will never start a game. You will never become a vested athlete, meaning you've reached the opportunity to have an actual pension. You will never get your 3 years and 3 games to become vested. It will never happen. So all this little 50 grand, 60 grand, you got a cool car now, it means nothing when you're 23 years old. And the skills, as I mentioned, that you've developed are useless for you now. That name, that image, that likeness, it has zero value right now. So let's get back to keeping the main thing.
Yeah. Interesting. And you work in NIL, the NIL realm now, don't you? Am I?
Well, I did an NIL deal with a player, which I'm very proud of, by the way.
Yeah. Who is it?
Willie Lampkin at UNC. He's an offensive lineman, of course. We partnered with him through my LB Design football company, and he does some ambassador work for us. And, it's in alignment with what I feel. If you're going to use it to add value to yourself as an athlete. Like, the car, okay, I would have taken a couple of cars when I played, no doubt. You giving it to me, I'm driving it. However, I think there needs to be people involved that can educate these players. If you're an offensive lineman and you got a weight issue and the league knows you have a weight issue, maybe you shouldn't be doing NIL deals with the local burger shop.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not a great idea.
Yeah, exactly. Watch your diet, kid. No, you're exactly right. It will find level water. But I wanted to ask you before you go, when you played football at Ohio State, when did you become cognizant of the fact or aware that maybe you should be sharing in the revenue? Because that's what's coming. Revenue sharing with the players is coming based on how much just ridiculous amounts of money y'all help generate for the athletic department, for the university, for the conference, for the NCAA. That is coming sooner rather than later, based on a couple of lawsuits that are going on out there right now and other things that could happen. But when did you become aware that maybe you should be sharing a little bit in the profit?
I didn't. and I can't speak for everybody, I can only speak for me, Tim.
Yeah.
That was not something top of mind for me. My concern each and every day was conditioning after practice, making sure I was making my time, making sure that, I stayed eligible. I did not have, I had goals, and I
Gotcha.
was going to leverage my time at Ohio State to, as the kids said back then, I'm going to get mine.
Yeah.
We're going to get ours, but I'm damn sure going to get mine out of this as well. And if that meant that the university made tens of billions of dollars or whatever it might be, man, happy for them. But I have an opportunity to get mine. I'm going to get my degree. I'm going to utilize your weight room and your strength staff and your coaches and your field and this TV revenue and this TV games that we're going to play on. I am going to pimp all of this out to get mine. And I was able to leverage it in a way that I live a life that I'm very content with. And a lot of it has started with Ohio State football. And I'm forever indebted to Ohio State, and I will forever be a Buckeye and bleed scarlet and gray. But I truly can't speak to there ever was a time when I woke up one morning and said, well, you know what? I should get this. Look, I got my little check. I got food in the refrigerator. I got Minnesota to play this week. I have to go be the baddest dude on the field that day. Who's making the money ain't my business. I'm in a position to get mine.
Gotcha. I understand. But as you look at it now, I mean, I don't think college football should be a career. You know what I mean? I mean, that's what
totally.
I mean, you're going, a lot of these guys, like you just pointed out, a lot of these guys are going to play a lot longer in college football than they are in the National Football League.
Mm-hmm.
But now they're getting paid for it in big time. And, but like you just pointed out a minute ago, when you talked about going into the NIL realm, sponsoring that one kid, you've got to have a return on that. Eventually businesses that are involved, et cetera, they have to realize a return on such investments, right? Instead of just giving to good old you, right? I mean, good old OSU or good old State U, they have you want a return from your investment, right?
Absolutely, you want to return, and that's the business side of the game that these athletes have no idea. They think, just gimme. It's gimme. What they say, the gimme got shot. You got to give me something back.
Yeah.
And that's where that ROI. They don't understand that part. They don't understand the pressures that's going to come along with this. They don't appreciate how coaches are going to engage with you differently. You got an ankle sprain. Yeah, it used to be that you come on, man, we really need you to play. Now it's no, you got to play.
Yeah.
That ankle sprain ain't that bad. So what you're creating is a very NFL-like model without the guardrails, without the constraints. You don't have a union.
Yeah.
You don't have true representation. Mom and dad can't help you when you're sitting in that doctor's office and he's telling you, no, here's what we're going to do so you can play. Well, who's going to go get your second opinion for you? You'll call mom? You'll call dad?
Yeah.
That's not how that's going to work. You can't call your union. Your union rep isn't in the meeting room with you. So your ability to have resources that are going to service you, they're null and void. So again, when you're 17, 50 grand is a lot of money. 75,000 is a lot of money. Yeah, it's a lot of money today.
Yeah.
But tomorrow it's not. And what you're giving up today, it pales in comparison to what's out there for you, not just on the field, but the opportunities to expand yourself as a young man, to connect with people, to network, to do something bigger than the little dealership that's giving you a Ford truck or whatever it may be. Great. One day you should go back and buy that dealership. But if you just keep taking, you're going to end up with that truck. And at some point, it's going to have 100,000 miles on it. And you're still going to be sitting back home in whatever college town you came from or whatever hometown you are, wearing your Letterman's jacket, talking about the good old days.
Yeah. Or maybe living in that truck.
Maybe living in it. Yeah.
And by the way, unions are coming, man. It looks like by hook or crook, unions are coming in some form or fashion to, it looks like, major college sports. And we'll see where that goes. Cause I mean, you join a union, you're in it for 3 or 4 years, or 4 or 5 years. What do you owe them? What do they owe you? I don't know. We'll see where that
Right.
goes. But it's always good to have somebody advocating for you. I would think one way or the other, right, LeCharles? Because
Correct.
sometimes what you don't know, you don't know. And
You don't know.
anyway, boy, we could talk for another 4 hours because that's what I love to
Thank
do.
you so much.
But you've got to go. And I wanted to ask you one last thing. Is the toughest thing in what you're doing now when you're working with prospective linemen from the 8th grade up to 8 years into the NFL and more? Is it how tough is it to maybe tell a guy, or
It's
maybe you
over
don't,
with.
that maybe you don't have it? You know what I mean? I mean, it is that tough?
It's extremely tough. I wanted to be a GM. That was something that I was trying to position myself for. And I realized that it's probably not for me, partly because, I don't want to be the guy that tells you can't do it.
Yeah,
I don't want to be the dream killer per se. But it's the law of the land. It's nature. It just, but sometimes you watch those National Geographic specials and you see the baby, gazelle get eaten, and it's like, oh,
yeah,
well, that's just how it happens in the wild. And sometimes in this side of the fence, you have to truly honor the athlete by letting them know that what you're wanting probably isn't plausible, versus allowing someone to be naive and think that I'm a 5'11" offensive lineman that's 220 pounds and I want to play football at Ohio State.
yeah, yeah,
That's a great dream to have, but maybe not be the football player, but maybe you can become a trainer, work in equipment room or something else. If you love the game, you can always find something to do inside of it.
yeah. Wow, that's a good way of wrapping this up, man. Like I said, I could go on for hours, but Charles, and I know that you have offices both in Cleveland, the Cleveland area, and Chandler, Arizona, right? I mean,
Yes,
you may
sir.
have a plane to catch even as I speak. But Charles, thanks for joining the Tim May Show. We're going to do this again too one of these days. Is that all right with you?
Anytime. Thank you so much, Tim.
I appreciated LeCharles Bentley coming on the Tim May Show. It was a long but worth it conversation. This guy's got, like I said earlier, he's got a lot of irons in the fire, and is doing a great job with all of them. So I wish LeCharles Bentley continued success. Like I said, he's one of my favorite guys ever, because you always knew he was going to be a success doing something, whether it was playing football, where he was really good, one of the great centers in Ohio State history, to now teaching fundamentals of offensive line play to individuals and helping them with the draft, helping them stay sharp after they end the NFL, or helping even pre high schoolers who want to learn more and more about the craft and sometimes the art of playing offensive line. But you know what? I enjoyed that conversation. I've got a great one coming up next week with the head coach and chief bottle washer, really, James Grega of the Ohio State Football Club team, or Ohio State Club football team, I guess is the way you should better pronounce it. But he's built a juggernaut, for want of another term, and he doesn't get paid a dime to do it. But boy, what a great conversation with a guy who just loves the game of football and has excelled at it. So that's coming up next week. So until then, have a good week. We'll see you later.